the easiest way to turn your kids into geniuses, I mean, by the time they're 7, is just to front load huge amounts of experience, including dangerous experience. And my favorite story is Richard Branson tells it in his autobiography. His mother, who was an airline stewardess in 1946, flying the Atlantic, so not exactly, the safest thing to do, she was desperate that he wouldn't become dependent. And so when he was 4 years old, picture 48 months, she drove him miles from their London home in Shamley Green and asked him if he thought he could find his way home from there. And he said he thought he could. Get out and do so, then, she said. And now he said, where is he? He doesn't even have many words, So 8 or 9 hours later, when he finds his way home, he said nothing in his life ever seemed hard for him to do again. He drops out of high school, never goes to college, has his first $1 million by the time he's 19 by figuring out what people need and want and giving it to them cheaper or better or being anyone to offer it. What would our society be if we put millions of people through the same experience? I think it would be closer to what colonial America was and early federal America, when nobody wanted to work for somebody else. They wanted an independent livelihood. It would be closer to that than the corporate hell that we have now. But the corporations, following perfectly rational logic, have begun to need less and less people, but they have such political control over the legislatures and the federal government that there's no way to arrest this progress. Furthermore, as I spoke at General Motors about 10 years ago, and a mid-level executive told me, when I asked him, you guys had the world, there wasn't any competition. What happened? I remember when Jap cars came in, they had names like the Bluebird and the Fair Lady. I mean, it was a joke. What happened? And he said, what happened was this: that engineering, which used to be the fast track to the executive suite and profit sharing and all the rest of that good stuff, stopped being the fast track. Finance became the fast track, taking these huge profits, speculating in variable rate mortgages, in foreign currencies. That became the road. The same thing that happened to the steel industry in Pittsburgh. Wasn't moved out of Pittsburgh because any of them were losing a penny. They were making great profit. It's that the Harvard B school boys said, look, you can take this money, make a lot more, and not work. Of course, that would get rid of 100,000 steel workers, truck drivers, but who the hell cares about them? Didn't Darwin say they're not evolving, they're all Irish anyway?
Well, this is the juxtaposition between eugenics and that type of mentality where people are under control, and someone like Branson who gets to go on walkabout, which is a rite of passage, which was around in the founding of this country with high literacy rates. And so when we had a high entrepreneurship, self-reliance, literacy rates, people who had critical thinking and knew how to deal with problems on their own, because if not, you might die.
Or other people think badly of you if you say, I want a job for, what do you want to do?